Have you ever seen an idiot saying idiotic things on Facebook and felt that uncontrollable urge to speak up and, set him straight? Even though you know it's about as effective as telling your dog that your dinner is not their dinner, meaning that you'll have to probably do it again tomorrow. Recently, I saw a discussion on Facebook about the precautions that women take when going on a date with a stranger. One woman said that her friend waits with her at the bar or the restaurant, and then once the man arrives, she takes a photo of the two of them. And in the best case scenario, you've got a lovely memory of a beautiful first date. In the worst case scenario, you can give that photo to the police so they can identify the man who assaulted, raped, or killed you. A girl's got to be prepared.
Yeah, be prepared. We'll be prepared. For what?
And a man contributed his concerns on this post about women being prepared for dates, which is great because we were all waiting for that. And he said that he didn't like the idea of having his photo taken because he was worried that a woman could accuse him of rape when he didn't do it, and then they would use the photo as proof, and with the photo as the only evidence because he didn't do it, they could get him convicted and he could go to prison for the rest of his life. He swore it's happened before too. There's lots of men in prison where there's only a photo as evidence because they didn't do it, and that's how you know it's true. I felt that uncontrollable urge, so I began to type, and I explained that a man's likelihood of being sent to prison on the strength of one photo as evidence is nowhere near as high as a woman's or a female identifying person's chance of being assaulted or raped, and then not even as high as the chance of her not reporting that. Also, if you don't want your photo taken because you don't want to be tricked into going to prison for being a rapist when you're totally not a rapist, it kind of makes you look like you could be a rapist. Just letting you know that. So let's talk numbers. I'm not going to assess the amount of men who've gone to prison on the strength of a single photo because that doesn't happen. There's no numbers for that, I don't think. But I'm going to talk about some other numbers because I'm one of them. I was sexually abused by the partner I was with when I was 19 and 20. It traumatized me. It left me with a condition called vaginismus. Basically, my vagina started going all Gandalf on everyone and everything. To doctors, tampons, even me. It caused me to need specific sexual assault counseling from victim services. It influenced the two situationships that I found myself in immediately after, and then it influenced the fact that I stayed single for the 10 years after that. But I never went to the police. I never reported it. I didn't tell the friends I had at the time. I didn't even tell my parents for a really long time. And I'm not rare. I'm not a rare case. I am not a unicorn. At least not in that sense. I'm a rare unicorn beast in many other ways. Many people who are sexually assaulted and abused, whether by a stranger or an intimate partner or a friend, don't say a word, whether that's to the police or even to the people around them. According to the Victims of Crime Assistance League, sexual assault is possibly the most underreported crime in Australia. And according to the Queensland Government Department of Justice, an estimated 8% of women who experienced sexual assault said the police were contacted about the most recent incident, either by themselves or others. The majority, 92%, of women who experienced sexual assault did not report the incident to police. Most sexual assaults occurred in a residential location, 69%, most commonly a private dwelling. 93% of assaults did not involve the use of a weapon. So that means that in 2023, the 36,318 sexual assault victims who reported their assault to police was 8% of the number of people who actually experienced assault. These statistics also highlight the fact that sexual assault is not usually a stranger holding up a woman in a dark alley at gunpoint. It's in a home, on a date, with force or coercion maybe, but no weapons, no scary strangers who attack someone with a knife in darkness. It's people we know, in places we know. And according to the New South Wales Bureau of Crime Statistics and Research, only 15% of sexual assaults reported to New South Wales Police result in charges being laid, and of those cases that do go to court, fewer than half are proven. So why don't we talk? Why don't we seek justice? Why don't we try to get these dangerous predators off the streets so they can't harm anyone else? There are a number of reasons. One of them is because the whole process is really fucking hard and it probably won't go anywhere or do anything. That kind of puts a dampener on your motivation. Just for context, I had someone put parts of themselves inside my orifices when I didn't really want them to. Part of reporting sexual assault and abuse involves physical testing, where someone you don't know has a look at your body and your orifices to see if someone has been messing with them. When someone has been invading your body and your soul, you want to curl up in a ball and stop existing. The absolute last thing you want to do is allow someone else to invade your body and your soul, especially because the first person who did that did not see you as a person when they did those things they did to you. They saw you as an object to be used. As human and as humane as the investigators would be, they still have to investigate, and in that investigation, your body is a piece of evidence. I haven't experienced this process. I'm just speculating on how it would be and how it would feel based on things I've read. I just know that the process of being checked for sexual assault is something that I've dreaded. In my case, however, it was also because I honestly didn't know that I was being abused until 2 years later, until after the relationship was done and gone. This relationship was my first. And for context, I was able-bodied at the time. When it began, I was 19, very naive. I had come from a conservative Christian home. I had basically no sex education. I told my boyfriend, who was 8 years older than me, very worldly, very experienced, that I did not want to do anything sexual. I wasn't ready. I wasn't interested. I would realize later that I'm demisexual and I don't experience sexual attraction or sexual interest in the same way as many people. He agreed. He seemed supportive. He seemed to think it was sweet. He just wanted to be with me and spend time with me and get to know me as a person. Beautiful, beautiful bullshit. Very soon, however, the coercion began. Coercion, pressure, taking advantage of my lack of experience. I would literally question something he did and be like, I don't know about this. And he would just tell me that it didn't count as sexual activity and just count on me not knowing much better. He would also claim that I was breaking promises and not showing my love to him if I didn't go through with certain actions. He created a safe word that I could use if things went too far. Now, I've learned later that safe words are often used in BDSM relationships where things can go too far, when things can get extreme. In just something very vanilla, you shouldn't need a safe word. It should be enough to just say, I don't really want to do that. That should be enough. Saying no should be enough. And no, we had to have a safe word. And then he would just ignore it constantly. He used force, but not to the level that it would create bruises. He took advantage of the fact that I was passive and I didn't want to make a fuss. I didn't scream or call out because I didn't want to get in trouble for waking his parents, who he lived with. I didn't fight back because when he did, he would act as though I had hurt his feelings. He engaged in forced sexual contact with me, but in our world, it was always my fault. He wouldn't have had to force me if I had been more willing, if I had been more loving, if I had been more experienced. I was not happy. I was broken. I felt dirty. I felt guilty. But at the time, I would not have described myself as abused. I would have described myself as a bad girlfriend, as someone who was letting my boyfriend down, as someone who needed to be punished sometimes, as someone who needed to learn and be taught. I was essentially just parroting the things that I had been taught. It was years later in therapy that the abuse was identified. I'd been referring to my bad boyfriend for a year or two, and my therapist had wanted to push, but there was just a block. There was a big brick wall where I would always push something away. It was one day when I was describing, of all things, the uncomfortable nature of a pap smear. That disconcerting scratching inside my body. And I likened it to my bad boyfriend when he was frustrated with me and wanted to teach me a lesson. And my therapist had to stop me and ask me, was I saying that it was normal in our sex life for him to hurt me on purpose? And I said, yes, but that's normal for everyone, and I deserved it, and it made sense in context, and I was the greatest apologist you have ever seen. My brain had done a wonderful, wonderful job of deluding myself about the situation to make sure I could exist with it. I had always avoided talking about my bad boyfriend, and my therapist had wanted to probe, but again, I was always pushing back. This showed him that this was more than just two teenagers that argued sometimes, or a guy who didn't answer his phone or cancelled dates. This was a predator who sought out an inexperienced young person who could not fight back, and who thrived on my fear and discomfort, and who knew that I would not speak, partly for fear of being judged in my religious community. A report from the Australian Institute of Health and Welfare supports my experience. Rates of reporting sexual violence, such as sexual assault, to police have historically been impacted by a range of factors, including misconceptions on what constitutes sexual assault, mistrust of police, concerns relating to being believed and having to relive the experience, past negative experiences with police, institutional violence at the hands of police for some population groups, and barriers to accessing police, such as knowledge and understanding, geographical location, and specific population group characteristics. This same report collected data from women, not from men, as information is even more difficult to collect from that group, and that is something that really needs to be worked on. But it listed various reasons why women did not come forward and report their incident of sexual assault. They include not regarding it as serious. Maybe they thought if something wasn't full rape, then it didn't count. They're feeling ashamed or embarrassed, feeling like the police could do nothing, which, as we saw before with the numbers, they're not wrong. Not knowing if the incident was a crime. Again, if something isn't full rape, do we think it actually counts as sexual assault? Feeling like they wouldn't believed and not wanting the perpetrator to be arrested. That last point is nuanced. Sometimes we don't want the perpetrator arrested because they're someone we care about, even if that care is built on a trauma bond and they don't care for us. Perhaps the victim depends on the perpetrator financially. They might be a spouse, the parent of mutual children, or even the parent of the victim themselves. If the perpetrator is a friend, the victim might not want to disrupt their social group and be ostracized if they're not believed. If you dob your friend in for sexual assault and then it's investigated, they ask all your friends what's going on, and then it doesn't go to trial, you have just lost your friend's group or torn it apart if half believe and half don't. If it was a boss or a colleague, people might not want to risk their job. Sometimes we don't want the perpetrator arrested because they're dangerous. They were already willing to assault us. If we go to the police and the police investigate them and it all falls apart in court or beforehand, which, most likely would, and they aren't sent to prison, all we're left with is someone who has even more reason to be angry at us and the confidence of knowing that they weren't caught. I've spoken about my sexual abuse to my therapist, to my friends, to my partner, to my family, and even here on YouTube. I was granted free therapy with a sexual assault counselor through Victim Services due to my abuse, and I was able to do that without having to start any legal proceedings, which is good because I have no plans to start any legal proceedings. I have no plans to go to the police. I have no plans to name my abuser. I have mixed feelings about it because I know he is probably in contact with young people. And I know that my age and innocence and immaturity were definitely attractions to him, and that makes me concerned. It makes me wonder if I should speak up, if I should expose him, if I should try to make a change, but what can I do? I have no proof. I have no evidence. This happened 14 years ago. All I have are my words and my memories. Even my own journal entries are useless because I saw a lot of things through the eyes of my abuser. If he told me it was love, I wrote in my journal that it was love. If he told me we had a good time, I wrote in my journal that we had a good time because sometimes going along with the delusion is the only way to stay sane. My words mean nothing. Healing from sexual abuse is incredibly difficult. I've spent 14 years dealing with the aftershocks of events that took place over a 1.5 year period. They rewired my brain. They changed my perception of this myself. Hell, they changed the way my bladder and my vagina physically operate. Do I want to talk to police about these things that I barely understand, when they will most likely not lead to an investigation, let alone an arrest, let alone a conviction, let alone prison time? No, I do not. Do I want to slice open an old wound that is partially healed over, that aches and weeps sometimes, that pulls a bit, but that I have become used to, all in the hope that this time it might heal a little more cleanly and, in its healing, might help others? No, I do not. Do I wish that the girl before me, because I'm certain there was a girl before me, I cannot possibly be the first, had the strength that I don't, and had done the things that I can't do now, and had made sure that he was not free to do the things he did? Yes, I do, but I also know the facts. An immunologist named Dr. Jeremy Coleman, who I saw when I was 20, tried to perform an internal examination to check for an ovarian cyst. But I expressed some discomfort at the idea, and I suggested that I could have my mother present. Suddenly he decided that it wasn't necessary, and also said that I didn't need to mention it to my mother. Multiple allegations were eventually made against Dr. Coleman of sexual assault involving inappropriate breast and vaginal examinations. In 2014, the Medical Council of New South Wales, becoming aware of these allegations, required a chaperone to be present when he was examining patients. He was charged by police in 2016 and his registration was suspended. He went to trial in 2017 and was found not guilty on 50 counts of sexual and indecent assault. He was back in court in 2023 for 13 counts of sexual, indecent, and common assault and was once again acquitted. The psychiatrist who initially spoke to me about my bad boyfriend was incredibly focused on sex. He told me I should masturbate, that I should use sex as a hobby, that I should let him know my progress in all of these things. This was after finding out about my abuse. He made inappropriate comments to me about my looks, my body, my taste in men, my potential relationships. Our clinical relationship went downhill as he didn't believe in non-male autism and expressed a belief that I was probably faking my disability for attention. It is hard to work with someone that I couldn't trust, and hard to take advice from somebody that I knew thought I was just plain delusional. A few years later, I heard some news about him. He tried to pay a patient for sex. She was the same age I was when I started seeing him. The sad reality of being female or female identifying is that there will often be another predator. If someone had reported my abuser before he got to me, chances are it would have gone nowhere. If he had been taken out of the game before he met me, Dr. Jeremy Coleman and Dr. Brian Neal were still waiting for me. And in the case of Dr. Jeremy Coleman, even 50 counts over years of offending with multiple victims weren't enough to get a single conviction. So that's why I didn't report my sexual abuse, because I didn't see the point. I mentioned some numbers earlier about how many people don't report their sexual assault, how many things go to court. The maths of those numbers is that 0.5% get proven. I don't want to go through all of that for those chances. So many of us don't see the point. For women, there's proof that it often doesn't have a result. For men, there are so little results that we don't even have the data to prove that there aren't enough results. I'd love to say, get out there and let's take down the abusers. But I also know how many times I get curled up into a ball, feeling like I have just been violated. And I can barely explain how broken I feel 14 years on. If you can't speak up, that's okay. There's no pressure. Just heal as best you can, because there's no such thing as just speaking up. It can be the hardest gamble in the world. That's all for this one. Thank you for listening and for learning with me. I wish we could solve this. My sources are in the description. Bless.